Cashin was in the middle of his morning routine, sipping strong black coffee and browsing through the sports section of the newspaper, when Isidora's voice broke the quiet hum of the kitchen. Without any warning, she slid into the chair across from him, her eyes dark and unreadable. "Cashin," she said, her tone sharp and cold. "Put the paper down. We need to talk." He hesitated for only a moment before setting the paper aside, expecting it to be a minor concern or a trivial issue. Instead, her next words struck him like a bolt of lightning. "I'm leaving you. I want a divorce." The room seemed to shrink around him as his mind raced. For a long, tense moment, silence hung in the air, a silence heavy and ominous, as though the space itself was charged with a brewing storm. Cashin's initial shock was hidden behind a mask of calm. His eyes narrowed slightly, and though a storm of betrayal and hurt churned within him, his face remained an unyielding display of indifference. "Is that it?" he asked, his voice quiet, laced with disbelief and a hint of bitter amusement. Isidora's gaze flickered with something between resignation and defiance, a final resolve. "Yes, Cashin. I'm done. You've been distant for a long time now." Cashin leaned back in his chair, letting the weight of her words sink in. A whirlwind of emotions raged beneath his composed exterior as he met her steady, unflinching stare. He realized in that moment that this confrontation would redefine every promise and memory they had shared. In the heavy silence that followed, the seeds of revenge and cold calculation began to take root, whispering that nothing between them would ever be the same again. Cashin stood at the doorway of his private study, his mind still spinning from Isidora's declaration. Morning light streamed through the blinds, casting sharp stripes across the polished mahogany desk. He walked slowly, each step measured, as though navigating a labyrinth of thoughts. Once inside, he closed the door firmly behind him and reached for a pristine notepad and a sleek pen, a gift from a trusted mentor. Though his hands appeared steady, beneath the surface they trembled with a mix of icy fury and unsettling calm. The blank page before him felt like a canvas, inviting him to craft the first move of his calculated retaliation. With deliberate precision, Cashin began to write. "Dear Lysander Wolf, thank you indeed, and thank God that Isidora is finally out of my life." He paused, his eyes narrowing as he reflected on the absurdity of fate. His mind wandered to the lottery ticket he had impulsively purchased the previous night, a small, almost forgotten symbol of hope. Reaching into his wallet, he pulled out the ticket and carefully placed it beneath the final line of his note. "Perhaps, if fortune smiles upon you, the winnings might be enough to satisfy the insatiable greed of a woman who has shattered trust beyond repair. Good luck." Cashin read the words aloud, his voice low and steady, each syllable carrying the weight of his determination to reclaim control. A dark humor wove through the note, a bitter irony that fueled his resolve. As he sealed the envelope, he murmured to himself, "This is for every broken promise and every wasted moment." The envelope, now a vessel for both disdain and grim hope, was addressed to Lysander Wolf. Cashin's eyes gleamed as he handed it to Isidora with chilling finality. "Isidora," he said, his tone icy and clipped, "make sure this gets to him. I don't trust you not to interfere with my plans." Her face twisted briefly in shock and defiance. "You think I'm that foolish?" she snapped, clutching the envelope tightly. But Cashin had already reclaimed control of the situation, his voice cutting through the tension with cold authority. "Pack your things, Isidora," he continued, his words echoing in the kitchen where, just moments earlier, their morning had been shattered by the truth. "You're leaving, and I won't let your betrayal cost me more than it already has," Cashin muttered to himself. Outside, the world continued at its relentless pace, but inside his carefully arranged sanctuary, every detail, from the crisp paper to the glint of the lottery ticket, spoke of a man channeling heartbreak into a calculated plan for retribution. After sealing the envelope, Cashin sank into the leather chair at his desk. The soft click of the door marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The weight of his decision settled over him like a shroud, but the steely determination in his eyes remained unshaken. Taking a measured breath, he reached for his cell phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. Quentin Drake, a childhood friend and now a renowned family law attorney. "Quentin, it's Cashin," he said in a deliberate tone as the phone rang. "I need your help to set things in motion. Isadora's actions today have left me no choice. I'm filing for divorce, and I want a restraining order. She must stay away." On the other end, Quentin's voice was calm, but tinged with concern. "Cashin, I'm sorry you're going through this. I can only imagine how painful it must be. But if she's determined to cause chaos, you need to act decisively. I'll be in my office first thing tomorrow morning. We'll go over the details and draft the necessary paperwork." Cashin's response was firm, almost cold. "I appreciate it, Quentin. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Tell me what I need to prepare." As the muted hum of his study surrounded him, Quentin outlined the steps: organizing financial records, securing joint account details, and listing every shared asset. Cashin listened intently, his mind cataloging each item and transaction with precision. Every detail was a stark reminder of the life he was about to dismantle. He could already picture the courtroom, the judge's gavel striking down the remnants of a once shared existence. After hanging up, there was a soft knock at the study door. Marigold Saar, his newly promoted executive assistant, entered with her usual poise and quiet confidence. "Mr. Voss," she began, her voice professionally yet steady, "I've finalized your schedule for today. There's an urgent board meeting in 45 minutes. She placed a sleek tablet on his desk with a soft thud. Cashin's gaze shifted from the tablet to Marigold's concerned eyes. "Thank you, Marigold. Please make sure all my calls are prioritized today. I'll also need every document related to our joint finances organized and ready. There's no room for error." Marigold nodded, her expression a mix of professionalism and subtle empathy. "Understood, Mr. Voss. I've already started compiling the financial records from the past 2 years. You'll have everything in order before the meeting." As she left, Cashin's thoughts wavered between the cold logic of his plan and the lingering echoes of memories, shared breakfasts, whispered promises, fleeting moments of laughter that now felt like distant dreams. But each memory only strengthened his resolve. He turned back to the meticulously organized folder on his desk, reviewing every figure and transaction as though they were pieces of evidence in a trial. Marigold returned shortly, placing a fresh cup of coffee on his desk. "Sir," she began, her tone clear and precise, "I've cross-verified the bank transfers. The funds are now safely in your individual account. Everything has been flagged for easy reference." Cashin allowed himself a brief nod of approval. "Excellent work, Marigold. Make sure the new locks are activated immediately. If Isadora even dares to step near this house, I won't allow any more surprises." Their exchange was brief and businesslike, yet beneath the formal dialogue lay a palpable tension, one born of betrayal and the promise of calculated retribution. Cashin felt a grim satisfaction in the precision of his plans. Even as his heart pounded with sorrow and cold resolve, he knew every step he took was paving the way to a future free from treachery. With Quentin's instructions fresh in his mind and Marigold's diligent updates reinforcing his every move, Cashin steeled himself for the impending legal battle. A battle not only to sever the final ties with Isadora, but also to rebuild the man he once was, brick by calculated brick. Later that afternoon, the tension in Cashin's meticulously controlled world reached a breaking point. After a long day at the office, he returned home as dusk settled, the hum of streetlights underscoring the gravity of the situation. Inside the grand foyer, the silence was abruptly shattered by a forceful crash from the living room. Cashin hurried to the scene, his pulse. The spacious, modern living room had descended into chaos. Shattered fragments of expensive glass and splintered wood littered the floor, a stark contrast to the pristine order Cashin had so painstakingly maintained. The hum of security cameras quietly recording every moment was the only constant in the turmoil. In the center of the destruction stood Isadora, her eyes wild with a mix of fury and despair. Her erratic movements betrayed her agitation as she rifled through drawers and overturned carefully arranged belongings. Broken lamps, scattered personal items, and the remnants of a vase that once held fresh flowers painted a vivid picture of her anger. Cashin entered the room, his voice cold and firm, slicing through the chaos. "Isadora, stop," he commanded, his tone unwavering. "There's no need for this." Her voice trembled with bitter defiance. "I won't let you erase my memory. I'm taking back what's mine," she spat, punctuating her words by hurling another vase to the floor. Their eyes locked, a battle of wills. Hers burned with unrestrained emotion, while his held a steely calm tinged with disdain. "I'm not interested in your possessions," Cashin said, his voice steady, cutting through the noise of destruction. "What I want is control over this situation and my future. And you're not part of that equation anymore." Isadora's face twisted with shock and wounded pride. "You think you can just lock me out? That a few new locks and some legal papers can undo everything," she retorted, her voice breaking under the weight of her rage. Cashin's gaze hardened. "I'm doing exactly what's necessary. The new locks are already arranged, and I won't risk any more surprises." His voice softened into a dangerous calm. "Every action you take now only strengthens my case." The quiet hum of the security system in the background was a constant reminder that every impulsive move she made was being recorded, a digital testament to her unraveling. Without breaking his composure, Cashin picked up his phone and called Quentin, recounting the situation in calm, deliberate detail. He knew the footage from the cameras would be critical in court, evidence that painted a clear picture of Isadora's disregard for the restraining order. When the police arrived, they documented the destruction with photographs and detailed statements. Cashin stood silently, his expression inscrutable, watching the scene unfold with a mix of satisfaction and melancholy. Every shattered item, every broken piece, was proof of Isadora's rage and her spiraling descent. In his eyes, it justified every precaution he had taken. As the officers led Isadora away for questioning, she shot one final, defiant glare over her shoulder. "You've lost," she hissed, her voice echoing through the now silent room. Cashin's reply was as cold as steel. "I'm merely reclaiming what was always mine." The finality in his tone left no room for argument. In that charged moment, the collision of raw emotion and calculated strategy reached its peak. Isadora's outburst, immortalized on film, would become the cornerstone of Cashin's legal case, a plan meticulously designed to sever their shared past and secure his controlled future. In the days that followed, the legal and emotional storm reached its climax. Cashin's carefully calculated strategy took shape, with Isadora's unruly behavior serving as irrefutable evidence in court. The judge, after reviewing the security footage and police reports, issued a permanent restraining order against her and mandated restitution for the destruction she had caused. At a sterile courthouse in downtown Chicago, Cashin sat across from Isadora during a brief hearing. The air was thick with tension as the judge delivered the terms. Isadora was to compensate for all damages, cover the cost of Cashin's ruined belongings, and remain a distant memory in his meticulously reconstructed life until the divorce was finalized. Cashin's eyes betrayed a flicker of grim satisfaction as he listened to the verdict. While his expression remained cold, the decision marked a victory. After the hearing, Quentin approached him in the courthouse corridor. "Cashin, you've done it," he said quietly. "Legally, you're untouchable now. Everything is on your side." Cashin nodded, his thoughts already turning to the next phase of his life. "Thank you, Quentin," he said simply, his tone steady but resolute. "It's not just about winning in court," Cashin murmured to himself. "I need to ensure my life moves on, completely free from the chaos Isadora brought into it." Later that week, Cashin returned to his home, a fortress now secured with newly installed locks. As he stepped through the door, Mara Gold greeted him with her usual calm professionalism. "Mr. Voss, there's someone here to see you," she said, her tone careful. "A gentleman waiting in the foyer." Reluctantly, Cashin walked into the dimly lit entrance hall. A well-dressed man stood there, his demeanor casual yet tinged with regret. Cashin, the stranger began, his voice heavy with hesitation. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. The man introduced himself as Silas Mercer, a former confidant of Isadora and, as Cashin quickly deduced, her secret paramour. The revelation landed like a blow, though Cashin's expression remained impassive. I'm here because I have something for you, Silas said, pulling a crisp envelope from his coat pocket. Cashin took it cautiously, his pulse quickening as he stared at the sealed envelope. What is this? He asked, his voice low and measured. Inside was a cashier's check, the amount substantial enough to make his breath catch. Consider it your share of the winnings, Silas explained, his tone remorseful. You're half of a fortune you never had to split. Cashin arched an eyebrow, his gaze icy and suspicious. What do you mean, half of the winnings? Silas sighed, running a hand through his hair. Isadora and I, well, our arrangement ended in a bitter fallout. Amid the chaos, I held onto something, a lottery ticket she once prized.
It turned out to be a jackpot.
I cashed it, and now, he gestured toward the envelope. I think it's only fair you get a portion. After all, you've borne the cost of her betrayals more than anyone. A surge of conflicting emotions coursed through Cashin, disbelief, amusement, and a cold, hardened vindication. He stared at the check, letting a slow, bitter smile creep across his face. You've done well, Silas, he said, his tone measured and deliberate. It seems even the universe has a way of paying me back. Silas's eyes softened with an apologetic glimmer. I never intended for you to be collateral damage in this twisted affair. I just hope this, in some small way, sets things right. That very afternoon, back in his sleek office, Cashin felt the weight of the past finally begin to lift. The check from Silas represented more than financial restitution. It was a symbol of his triumph over betrayal. With Isadora legally out of his life, he refinanced his home, securing every asset under his name alone. Marigold's steady presence remained a source of comfort. Her professionalism and quiet empathy had been a constant through the storm, and now their occasional conversations hinted at a connection deeper than mere work. The future, though scarred by betrayal, shimmered with the promise of renewal and possibility. One crisp evening, Cashin sat back in his study, the check resting beside his meticulously organized documents. He allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He had weathered the storm with icy precision, turning heartbreak into a weapon. And in doing so, he had reclaimed not just his wealth, but the very essence of who he was. The scars of betrayal remained, but they had become markers of a past that had taught him the true value of control, vengeance, and, ultimately, freedom. Securing his front door one last time that night, Cashin glanced out into the quiet evening. The shadows of his past had finally been vanquished. Enjoy your weekend in Los Angeles, he murmured to himself, a small, knowing smile curving his lips. His voice dripped with finality. I hear it's supposed to be stunning no matter what. And with that, Cashin turned out the light and stepped into the future he had painstakingly reclaimed.